I'm Adelina Comas Herrera, and I'm delighted to welcome you today. This is the first webinar of a new interest group for the Global Observatory of Long-Term Care. It's the Workforce Capacity and Capability Interest Group. I'm going to briefly remind you all, I'm sorry if you've seen this before, of what the Global Observatory of Long-Term Care is, and also let you know also about the next webinars. So the Global Observatory of Long-Term Care is a platform for cross-national learning to improve and strengthen care systems, and is part of the International Long-Term Care Policy Network. Our aim is to identify key shared challenges and showcase how different countries and localities are addressing them, and also the research evidence that can help us with decision-making. And we are very much interested and want to facilitate collaborations internationally and across disciplines and across topics. And GOLTC is open to everyone, from policymakers, industry advocates, care professionals, and academics. The way it works is basically that the whole observatory is powered by people's willingness to share their work and knowledge. And what we do is we have our own publications, including long-term care system profiles. We have a blog, so if you have anything you'd like to let people know about, we're very happy to publish that. And we also are developing some methods and topics guides. The real motor of the observatory are the interest groups, and what they do is to get together around a particular topic, organize webinars like the one today, and each interest group has their own mini web page where they can share relevant publications and resources. And we are gradually developing a database which now has 555 experts on long-term care. All the experts are listed by country, topics, and methods, so you can search for people with similar interests and that you may want to collaborate with. We also are developing a database of publications on long-term care, of research projects, and of course you can search and look at the videos of the previous webinars. The next webinar we have is also related to the topic of today, as in we'll be talking about the politics of live-in care migration with a comparative study of Taiwan, Austria, and Germany on the 8th of May. I'm sorry it's a bit late for colleagues from Australia, but we will record it. We then have a webinar on a very different topic, but very important in terms of practice, on the 14th of May on global initiatives on continence care in long-term care. And that's, again, the first webinar of this interest group. And this will be covering Spain, Belgium, the UK, and Canada. We have then a webinar on the 19th of May on aging out of place, rethinking aging, place, and policy in times of change. And this will be really a discussion-based webinar on what I think is a very fascinating and important topic. And again, first for this interest group. On the 27th of May, this is more of a methodological webinar looking at estimating the cost of informal care with a novel two-stage approach to individual synthetic control. That's from the quasi-experimental methods interest group. And again, a very different topic, but again, very important. It's we have a webinar of the Global Perinatal Mental Health Interest Group on community health interventions through music for perinatal mental health. So that's the program for now. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm delighted to welcome this new interest group for the observatory. And I'm going to hand over to Rebecca Bilton, who's going to introduce the steering group and the interest group.
Hi, my name is Beck Bilton. I'm the Research and Program Director for an organisation called ARIIA, which advocates for evidence-based practice and innovation and implementation in aged care of evidence. We are very pleased to be part of this special interest group steering group and very excited to present this first one. I'm just going to briefly introduce our team of, supporters within the working group that have developed this webinar for you. I will let them actually introduce themselves rather than me do it. We're going to go very quickly because we want to spend most of the time on the presentation today, but very, very pleased to be part of this. So from Australia, we have Nikki, Paul, and Janine. Please quickly say hello, Nikki, first.
Hello, Nikki Baker, Research Fellow.
Janine,
Hi, Janine, also Research Fellow from ARIIA.
Paul,
Hello, everybody. Paul, a Research Librarian from ARIIA.
and then in the UK we have two other organisations that we've been pleased to collaborate with. So we have Associate Professor Simon Bottery from the London School of Economics.
Oh, you got the right name, but the wrong title.
Wrong.
It's okay. I'm Simon.
You've been promoted.
I think he's associate professor must be above senior fellow. That's what I am at King's Fund. So yes, so thank you for the promotion, and I'll happily take the salary bump. Yeah, I'm Simon Bottery. I'm senior fellow in social care at the King's Fund. We're a think tank based in England.
King's Fund, sorry, not London School of Economics. I've done both wrong. And then last but very much not least are our colleagues from Skills for Care. And so we have Sarah Gilbert and her colleague Anna. Would you like to introduce yourselves, please?
Yep. Hello, everybody. Good morning or good evening, depending on where you are. I'm Sarah Gilbert, Head of Workforce Strategy Implementation at Skills for Care, and joined by my colleague Anna. Would you like to introduce yourself, Anna?
I'm Anna. I'm one of the workforce intelligence analysts at Skills for Care. So a lot of numbers that we see on the next page, I can talk us through.
Great. So each of the organisations has prepared a presentation for everyone's viewing pleasure today. We're hoping to do fairly short, snappy presentations and leave a few minutes after each presentation for questions. We've hopefully tried to cover all different perspectives of care, and the focus today is really about workforce retention and bringing that from different perspectives. So to kick us off, Simon is going to provide a presentation on some work that he's done previously in younger adults and their I guess, experiences and what influences their likelihood of being retained within the workforce, within the care sector. Please kick it off for us, Simon.
Okay, so yeah, I'm going to present briefly on a piece of work we did in the last sort of 18 months or so, looking at younger workers' experience in adult social care in England. So I'm going to whiz through things, but basically this slide is just saying we did three bits of work, really. We did a piece of work speaking to social care providers in England, asking them about how to effectively recruit and retain younger workers. We did a chunk of data analysis using actually Skills for Care data about what the current situation was in terms of younger workers in the workforce. And then we spoke to younger workers themselves, and that's what I'm mainly going to focus on in this presentation. So here's just a quick slide summarising a few things about the younger workforce. On the left-hand side, you can see social care in England has a problem with younger workers in terms of recruiting and particularly retaining them. So a relatively small part of the workforce is made up of younger workers, and the social care sector does badly in comparison to, for example, the hospitality sector in terms of recruiting workers. And as you can see, the average age is getting on a bit, frankly, at 35.3. We've got quite a lot of workers who are in their sort of 40s and 50s who are on the point of retiring. Quite a wide variation between employers in terms of the percentage of workers who are under 25. Some have half of their employees under 20, about half of employees rather have quite a lot of under 25s, but some have no under 25s at all, and a lot of turnover. So if people do join the sector under 25, they're unlikely still to be in the sector a decade later. When we spoke to providers about this, we heard four things. We heard them say that they thought that younger people had a lot to offer the sector, but it wasn't simple. There were complications and difficulties about employing younger people. Providers also said that actually they themselves were positive about having more young people in the workforce, but they didn't feel that was a universal view across the sector. We thought we were speaking largely to people who were enthusiastic about the idea of younger people. That's sort of why they agreed to speak to us. But they said that actually the general feeling across the rest of the sector really wasn't as positive as that. And they talked about the fact that they changed some of the recruitment process and to support younger people. And then they told us that they thought that the main reason that younger workers left the sector was because of the demanding nature of the job. And we were speaking particularly about the care worker role, that sort of frontline care worker role. And what providers said is it's a really tough job, and lots of young people coming in actually don't really have the life experience to be able to do it. So we wanted to test that out, really, and we spoke to 16 young care workers. I'm not going to leave this slide up, but you can see it's a reasonably broad range in terms of, some balance in terms of gender, length of time working in the sector, client group, ethnicity, and location. So although it's a relatively small number at 16, it covers quite a lot of bases, as it were. So we spoke to a reasonable number of them. And essentially, our conclusions were that we found that a lot of young people were very positive that we spoke to about working in the sector. The people we spoke to, in many cases, really wanted to make a go of it and felt that they had a lot to bring to the job. That it was challenging, but they thought that they could offer it could potentially offer quite a lot of reward. However, what they also said was that you only get that job satisfaction and fulfillment when you're valued in the workplace. We need that support, they said. Particularly when we're going into, it may be our first full-time job. It may well be our first full-time job in the care sector. We need to be supported. And what we heard, frankly, too often, and you can see from number 4, is that they didn't experience that. What they found was a sector which was harsh and hostile to them, where we heard an awful lot of stories about bullying that they'd experienced. And, probably majority of the people we spoke to had experienced bullying in one form or another in at least one of the organisations that they'd worked for. And they felt that bullying was very often to do with their age. And there are some horror stories I can, and if you ask me, will repeat that people experienced. So what they generally said was that they were open-minded about the future, but that actually, while some were keen to stay in the sector, a lot of them felt that actually it was not going to be a place that they were going to stay around for very much longer. And here's a couple of quotes. This is someone, a young co-worker, I can't see myself doing this forever. Can't do it at 50. I love doing it, but it's just too much. Pressures of work, just too much. And then a very common thing that I said we heard was, it wasn't about the residents, it was the staff. They were just really nasty. They'd make me feel like I was really stupid. I wasn't being listened to. And we heard so many of those stories from people. I remember one from a young woman who had joined on a work placement from FE college. So she would have been about 17, 18 years old. Really enthusiastic, wanted to get into the care sector, went into a residential care setting, into a care home. First day, one of the more senior people who'd been there a long time came up to her and said, "Do you know what? We don't want you here. You're just going to be too much to look after. We just sooner you weren't here at all." 17 years old, first work placement, and that's the experience that she had. We thought that there was a bit of a sort of vicious circle going on, where employers had pre-existing attitudes about younger people. They had feelings about sort of Gen Z as a group. They'd maybe had previous experience of people not staying, so they thought that young people wouldn't stay for very long. As a result, they didn't actually spend that much time on recruitment, onboarding, and induction. It just wasn't something that they felt they had the capacity to do or felt was a priority. As a consequence, younger people didn't feel supported or valued, and as a consequence, they left. And so you get this sort of vicious circle, and we put this forward as a sort of basic hypothesis. Most depressing, I think, is we did a lot of work trying to talk to providers about our findings. We made a point of not putting out press releases which said young people bullied. We actually focused our work on talking to the sector itself and about what could be done differently. And we heard three different types of denial from providers. We heard some would say, well, it's all very well you say that, but actually, they are a nightmare to work with. They don't get up in the morning, they don't turn up for their shifts. They're always on their phones. We heard that quite a lot. A real sort of assumption that some of those stereotypes, really, I think, and they are largely stereotypes about younger workers and about Gen Z, were actually deeply embedded. So we had this one was, well, they are a nightmare. Actually, we're not sure we want anything to do with them. We also heard people who say, well, of course we want to attract more young people. And actually, my organisation is really good at it, or my sector is really good at it. So, yeah, we're really good at it in home care. You'll find in residential it's very different, but in home care it's fine, or in my organisation it's fine. And we were a bit dubious about whether that was necessarily true. And then the other one we heard was people saying, well, of course, young people get a tough time. Of course, there are difficulties, but, it happens everywhere. It happens in, hospitality. It happens in all of the sectors of the economy. So it's nothing special, nothing to see here specifically. And our view was like, well, it's, if it's other places too, it's not right. But also, if we've got a recruitment crisis, maybe we need to be better than other industries. Maybe we've got to be better with young people if we expect to recruit and retain them effectively. There are just a few things that we came up with as things that needed to change. I think I'd highlight number 1 and number 4. This attitudes thing, we heard it dripped through pretty consistently, even from providers who were good providers who wanted to get more younger people. This thing, we often heard assumptions about Gen Z and, them always being on their phones, that sort of thing. And that felt was like that sort of crept into attitudes towards them and behaviours towards them. And that leads, I think, to number 4, which is that if the sector wants to recruit more young people, if it wants to retain more young people, it's going to have to do things differently. And we, frankly, didn't get any sense that the provider sector really wanted to make that switch, even though there's a large group of, demographically, there's a big group of young people coming through in England, coming out of schools at the moment, that the sector ought to want to recruit and ought to want to retain. We didn't get any real sense that there was a large group of providers that really felt that this was something that they really wanted to get to grips with. Other issues there, I think, as well, but a slightly depressing report. We hoped, I think, we didn't expect to hear quite so much sort of negative things from workers, and we didn't expect to hear quite so much denial from providers, I think it's fair to say. This is if you want to follow up this is my email, my Twitter feed, and this is a link to the report. And I should give a shout out to my colleague Nick Blythe, who was my sort of co-conspirator on this work, and actually truthfully did most of the work. And I will stop now.
Thanks very much, Simon, and you powered through that, so we've got time for questions. Are there any questions from the audience? I'll kick off with one. Is there any plans to extend upon the work that you've done, or is it a discrete piece of sort of contract work? Or so what are your sort of future hopes and aspirations for the work that you're doing?
Yeah, we'd really like to carry on the work, and actually we're talking to other organisations about how that can happen. So actually we're talking to, for example, Skills for Care. We're talking to a couple of sort of funders in this area. I think there's a real opportunity, and Skills for Care, this may sort of come out in the next presentation, but Skills for Care, the strategy involves about how do we recruit more men and how do we recruit more younger people. And I think there's a real opportunity to do more work with providers about how they can support younger people, provide more materials to help them support. And also there is this thing about we need to change attitudes. I think the steering group we had on this report, had been around this sector for a while. We're interested in this issue. The general sense was, we've heard this so many times before. This was the case 10 years ago. It was the case 20 years ago. It doesn't really appear to have changed, and that's depressing. And I think unless we do something about that, then actually it will still be the case in another 10 years' time or another 20 years' time.
And as you say, a significant issue given the ageing population of the workforce itself. Paul from my team has just made a comment, which is Australia also shares the same issue recruiting the 15 to 24-year-old group in terms of youth work.
Yeah. I can see Lorraine and Kai have got hands up, I think.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm working from a single laptop. So, Lorraine, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thank you very much. Lorraine Frasina from the University of Bremen in Germany. I think it's a terrific study that you did, and it gets at a lot of factors that are so important that need to be addressed if we want to find a way to recruit more younger people, if we choose, if that should be indeed the intent, because I think that what's so interesting is that it's not clear based on your findings, whether that's even, but in the case of many providers, even what they really want to do, which is, I find somewhat shocking. I wonder if you could speak a bit more about the findings concerning what younger workers actually want or need, because you mentioned that they don't feel like they're getting enough support, but I think but this is the most difficult thing, that when you speak to workers of any generation, there's the sense of, well, we're not getting what we need, but when you dig deeper, okay, what do you need? In some cases, it's very clear, more money, more flexible work hours. But when it comes to attitudes, this is very soft and vague. Like, what do they mean exactly? Is this a question about how older workers communicate with them? I'm just wondering if over the course of the scoping interviews that you got a bit more concretely at what they think they need to improve their situation. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we did, and this is I say it's a relatively small group, so sort of tentatively, maybe 2 or 3 things they were looking for. First of all, they were acknowledging that actually they were raw to work and raw to social care, and so it could be a bit of a shock to the system. So they wanted, and they didn't use this term, but I will, sort of more hand-holding at the start. They were conscious. I remember someone saying to us, I did my first sort of week in home care. I'd never seen a catheter before. I had no idea what it was. And when I was supposed to, when someone said, we it's our job to change it, they were horrified. So there was a real sense that you need more support with the simple practical tasks. And they weren't getting those. We heard care workers who were put in quite appalling situations. I mean, someone in a mental health care home for people with severe mental health issues, having to deal with someone who was actively trying to kill themselves, had no experience, and didn't know what to do about a ligature and how you deal with a ligature around someone's neck. So some really practical things. I think there was a recognition that more money would be really helpful, but that wasn't the issue we heard that often. What we heard more often was about the sort of pressure of work and the intensity of work. And they did recognise that, that in an environment where there weren't enough staff to go around, where managers were stretched, they understood why it could be hard to give them the level of sort of practical and emotional support that they might need. And then the third thing is really to sort of crack down, I think, on some of that bullying behaviour. Simply not having the terrible things happening would actually be really, really helpful for lots of young people. Not having the sort of experiences there that just completely put them off, I think would be the third factor.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for this interesting presentation. I was wondering whether you had also asked how people or how these young people came into care. So what was the pathway? Was it at which age did they start? Because here over in Austria we have this discussion about the introduction of a care apprenticeship, where you start with 15, 16. And the other one is about young carers. We did a study about young carers with interesting results. Some said, well, okay, my experience as young carer was actually triggering me to go into care, while there were also others saying exactly the opposite. So I did it now, and I would not like to work in care.
Yes.
Did you have any experiences there?
Yeah, I'll be really quick because I know we need to move on. But yes, I think we scratched the surface of it. Basically, the young people we spoke to had come into social care by chance. Quite often they'd done quite badly in education. They came out looking for something and there were jobs available in social care and they thought, well, I could give it a try. They were often put off going into social care by teachers, by careers guidance, by parents. They were told it's not the place for them to go. And there didn't seem to be much of a connection between having done a qualification in health and social care and working in social care. I think our general sense was that people who got health and social care qualifications wanted to work in health rather than work in social care. So they got into it by chance, essentially. And some of them found that they were really, really good at it. And I think that's where there's just this massive opportunity where actually we could be drawing on people who haven't done well academically, perhaps, but could be brilliant carers and have got the potential to be developed. And some of them, when we spoke to providers, what was interesting was that we spoke to senior level providers, you know, chief execs, sort of directors of HR. A number of them had started out in care many years ago as care workers. They'd got into it and progressed very quickly. And that sense of you can move through the ranks quite quickly in care is something that we could draw on. I could talk about this subject for a long time, Kai, actually, but there's a lot more work I think needs doing to really sort of bottom some of this out.
Thanks, Simon. So we'll move on to our next presentation, and we have Sarah and Anna from Skills for Care, another UK part of our collaboration. So hand over to them. Thank you very much.
Hello. Thank you, Simon. That was really interesting. And yeah, we were always really interested in kind of collaborating and working alongside King's Fund on a lot of your really interesting research. So myself and Anna work at Skills for Care. So I'll say a little bit about what we do. I head up a team that's based at Skills for Care to implement a adult social care workforce strategy in England, and Anna works in our intelligence team. So she does a lot of the kind of data number kind of crunching analysis, identifying trends and so on. So she'll dig a little bit more into the data towards the end of our presentation. So Skills for Care is the strategic workforce development body for adult social care in England. So everything that we do is about making sure that the sector has enough people with the right skills and the right values to provide the best possible care and support to people who draw on it. We're an independent charity and we act as a kind of bridge between government and the social care sector in England. We work across health and social care systems, and through a lot of the work that Anna and her team do, we try to understand the key drivers of change in social care and the capacity, the characteristics, and also the skills that are needed in our workforce to meet people's future needs. I just wanted to give a snapshot of some of the data on our next slide, Anna. Simon's highlighted some of the challenges we face as a sector. This is a bit of a snapshot at high level, some of those big challenges that we're grappling with in England. So this is some of the headline data from Skills for Care's annual report called The Size and Structure of the Adult Social Care and Workforce in England. That's available on our website. So these statistics are gathered through our adult social care workforce data set, which Anna can talk a bit more about, but it has records on more than 650,000 working staff in social care from across 20,000 care providing locations. And these statistics cover April 23 to March 24. So you can see some quite staggering statistics which reveal some of the challenges for a workforce that's bigger than the NHS. So it's huge. So for the first time ever, the sector came together to think about, well, how can we make systemic change happen around some of these big issues and problems that we're facing, particularly which will be amplified in the future. So the sector came together, the adult social care sector led by Skills for Care, to develop a workforce strategy for adult social care in England. So this was a strategy designed for the sector by the sector. And it identifies the workforce needed in England over the next 15 years. We launched this strategy last July, and it sets out a plan for ensuring that we have enough of the right people with the right skills and values to provide that care for people who draw on it. I'm going to say a little bit about the strategy today, and I'm very happy if anyone wants to kind of get in touch afterwards and find out a little bit more. So there are 3 key areas within this strategy, and this mirrors the NHS long-term plan. So those 3 areas are attract and retain, which we'll focus a little bit on today, train, and also transform. So just to give a kind of a flavour of some of the types of recommendations which are in the strategy, there are some areas we can only make progress on, or input or investment from central government, but there's also a lot that we can do as a sector, and we already are starting to deliver as a sector, because we have representatives and backing from organisations across social care. There's a lot more we could say on the workforce strategy. We have a link at the end for anybody who would like to find out more. But just to pick out a couple of these recommendations which feel relevant to Simon's presentation and some of your questions. These are focusing on recruitment and retention. So there's one there about a kind of strategic cross-government action on a 10-year attraction plan for social care. So this is, we think, should be sponsored by the government, cross departments, and should also involve the likes of Job Centre Plus, Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, Education, local government, also health and social care, as well as people drawing on social care and providers, and bringing together a collaboration like that might enable us to target an attraction plan that focuses on younger generations, men, but also people with tech skills, because that's really key for the future of social care. And we heard, from Simon about some of the, why we need more younger people. I mean, we have a much older workforce, and also we need more men because they're very unrepresented in terms of social care. And there's a big gap, we know, in tech skills at the moment. I'm going to hand over to Anna to talk a little bit more about the detail, and then happy to take questions at the end if there's some time.
Thank you, Sarah. Yes, I'll talk a bit more about what Sarah's touched on, which is our adult social care workforce data set, which is a link there. So a bit more about what that actually is. So it's an online collection service, which is free, which it covers the entire workforce in England. So people are able to upload information about themselves as providers and about their workforce as well. And then from that, my team crunch the numbers, create estimates, and generate these publications that give us this insight into the sector, and produce publications such as understanding the size and structure of the workforce. We also produce some monthly tracking reports, including about recruitment and retention, which might be of interest to this group. And then our annual flagship report, which is the state of adult social care. And so I'll go a bit more into some of the findings, some of which Sarah's already touched on. So the big picture that came out of our most recent State of the Adult Social Care Workforce, which came out in October, found that overall the workforce grew for the second year in a row after a decrease for the first time during the COVID pandemic. We've got the lowest turnover rate since 2014-15, and for a record number of men who are in the sector now. These are some good figures, but we've found that a lot of these improvements have been driven by international recruitment, which seems to have been slowing since last year, and we are still struggling with the recruitment and retention of domestic workers, which is why we've still got a very high number of vacancies and a high vacancy rate compared to the rest of the economy in England at 8.3% or 131,000 vacancies. A bit deeper into some of the numbers regarding recruitment and retention, the turnover rate within adult social care is still very high, with about a quarter of workers over the year having left. The starter rate was higher than this, which is why it grew, but over the year, 30% of workers had started in that year. And we still have a high level of experience and a lot of skills being retained in the sector, even with people moving between different providers. So the average experience being 9.4 years still suggests we've got a lot of knowledge and experience within the sector. Something new that came up this year, we've recently started looking a bit more into the factors affecting turnover. And so on this page, we've got quite a few variables, but Skills for Care kind of picked out a lot of the most relevant ones. And one of them that might be of interest for us here is the second one down, which is age, and the influence on turnover for people by age. So we found that those under 25 were the most likely to leave their posts of all age groups, which makes sense. A lot of these factors will make sense to everyone. We'll understand that experience and pay will influence the factors affecting turnover. And we'll just dig a bit deeper into a couple of these. So for example, the one that's most relevant for us here will be the turnover among workers by experience. So for care workers who are in their first year, which will include a lot of the youngest workers, the turnover rate is at 39%. Whereas if care workers have a lot more experience, if they have 20 or more years, the turnover rate is less than 20%. So we are able to quantify how much experience is influencing whether people stay or leave over the year. And we've done the same for all of the other factors affecting turnover, for example, with international recruitment. But I'll go a bit deeper into something that was new for the State of report for the most recent year, which looks at a lot of the factors that are more within the control of employers, which gives them a bit of good news as to how they can support people to be retained in their job. So we looked at 5 factors supporting retention, one being level of pay, so whether the care workers are paid more than the next minimum wage coming up in the next year, 0-hour contracts, working full-time, accessing training, and having a relevant qualification to social care. And we kind of looked at these together and found that the more of these factors that care workers have, the more likely they are to stay. So this was one of the most interesting, I think, graphs that came out of our report last year, which found that the more of these factors a care worker has in their employment, the more likely they are to stay. And the good news is for employers, even just having one more of these employment factors is likely to help you retain more of those care workers. And if anyone's interested in factors affecting turnover, we do have a specific interactive visualization on our website. So do go have a look at that. But I'll end it there. I'll wrap it up. Just say thank you.
Thanks very much, Anna. And I think everybody on the call will probably be fairly jealous of the UK in terms of being able to have access to such a large data set that you can really unpack and slice and dice in such a way. It is really a valuable resource that not every country or sector has. So that's really valuable. I'm wondering if we're able to potentially put some of these links as resources on the Global Observatories or our page of the Global Observatories page, so that we can get some traffic to that as well as a fantastic resource, particularly if it's interactive and people can sort of explore it at their own, I guess, leisure, and also, you know, with what interests them most. And Sarah's put some of that in the hyperlink in the chat just now, so thank you for that. I again will just call for questions to either Sarah or Anna in terms of that. I think that the striking thing for me was, you know, it was pretty much a 5% improvement every time, wasn't it? Incremental. Every time you had an extra factor, you gained about 5% ish, roughly. in improvement of retention, and certainly that gives people hope that it doesn't have to be everything all at once, in terms of just being able to chip away at your organizational improvement. As Simon was saying, it's not it's not something that you have to do everything all at once to get people to stay and improve their conditions. I'm not familiar with 0-hour contract. I don't know if that's a UK terminology, but maybe just if you've got time to just quickly unpack that in other sort of other people's country context, what that means.
So a 0 hours contract would be, I mean, forgive me if I get any of this wrong, but it would be that an employer is not contracted to provide any hours for that person. So they will be on a contract and they will be given hours essentially, but they're not contracted to work any of them.
Okay, so it feeds into, I guess, their capacity to sustain a living if they're sort of on these contracts but not actually getting any work from them.
It's about
the reliability and stability of incoming work. Okay, thank you very much. Sen Ting Chai has just put a comment in about if these are collected from mandated annual reporting, is that where your data comes from, I think is the question. Forgive me if that's wrong, but I think that's my interpretation of it, is just how you get this data into your system.
So for well, in England, the sector is broken up into various different parts. So primarily it will be the independent sector, and independent providers aren't obliged to provide their data. We request that they do, and we can offer some, if they provide a certain level of data, then they will get access to training funding and other benefits from it.
So voluntary but incentivized.
Yes, yeah. But then for the local authority sector, which is only about 7% of the whole sector, that will be mandated.
All right, thank you. And Kelly and Alison, you've got about a minute each. So Kelly, would you like to go first, please?
Yeah, sorry, just my camera on. Yeah, hi, thanks for a really interesting presentation. And just thinking about the kind of factors that affect turnover and retention, something that we've been using your data for is to look at different organisational models, so like comparing for-profits, non-profits, government run, in terms of turnover. And I just wondered if that's something you'd been considering at all, and also something around size. And I suppose it does do kind of voluntary like non-profit organisations, smaller organisations, are they more likely to kind of retain their staff?
We would have that data available because we'll have the profiles of all the different providers that are within it, but we haven't specifically analysed that. We are able to have services commissioned if people were interested in looking at that kind of breakdown and crossover, but currently that's not something we've looked at.
And Alison, you get 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm curious, Anna, as to whether regulation emerged in any sense at all from conversations. Obviously, the social care workforce in England is not regulated. It is in Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, and that's often been sold as a way to professionalise the workforce, to improve its status, and so on. Although obviously it has other impacts. Given that the workforce is not regulated in England, I would be surprised if this was something that had come up. But I just wondered if any workers mentioned that they wanted any kind of recognition as being a workforce.
I'm not sure. I'm happy to say that, Anna. I'm not sure if that would come up through our WDS data, but correct me if I'm wrong. This is a really hot topic in England. I don't know, Simon might have something to add as well, but it's something that as part of the workforce strategy, one of the recommendations is to do some research into regulation of the workforce. I mean, parts of the workforce, 6% of the workforce are regulated professionals, so your occupational therapists, social workers, registered nurses, and they're a very small part of the workforce, and they have a pretty big impact on the workforce. But aside from that, we are doing some research, starting to explore some research at the moment as part of the workforce strategy. So when that progresses, we'll be able to share a bit more, if that's helpful, Alison, because I think it's a really good point. But it's very, there are very different views on it across the sector.
Would you be happy if I contacted you, Sarah, in relation?
Yeah, please do drop me a line. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Janine, I'm conscious you've got your hand up, Janine Charmley, but we're going to have to move on. Please put your question in the chat, and Sarah and Anna can answer that directly, if that's okay. And she's just put her email address. Sorry, she is Sarah, has put her email address in the chat as well. And as well, there were some links there to the different questions that they ask, as well as the different data sets. So we're going to move on. And I guess the comment while Janine is about to share the ARIIA thing is that, like Sarah just mentioned, the Australian aged care workforce is also has a small proportion of professionalised staff in terms of allied health and nursing, but the largest part is the unregulated workforce, and they are having the same discussions about professionalisation of care workers, and part of the argument for that is the recognition of those people and the valuable work that they do as a workforce being improved. So introducing Janine and Nikki from ARIIA, which is Australian Research and Industry Innovation Australia, which is a mouthful, and they are both research fellows in my team, representing a bigger team that has put a lot of work into this topic that they're about to present. Please take it away.
Thank you. I might just kick us off, and I just wanted to acknowledge Victoria Cornell and Tanya Marin, who haven't been acknowledged just yet. We are going to talk about the older workforce and have something to compare with Simon's earlier presentation. I would like to start, being in Australia, with an acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge the Aboriginal people as traditional owners of country where we live, work and play. We pay our respects to elders past and present, and acknowledge their ongoing connection to land, sea, waterway, sky and culture, and recognise how these ongoing connections are essential for physical and emotional health and well-being. Today's overview will give some definitions, the value of older workers in the workforce, some of the factors that affect retention, and then what we've found in the literature in terms of some strategies for older worker retention. And then if there's time at the end, we'll talk about the ARIIA Knowledge Implementation Hub. So for the purpose of this presentation, older workers are defined as workers aged 50 and older. There is quite a bit of discrepancy in the literature as to what an older worker is. Simon's definition was 35 and older. But what we've used for this presentation and the publications that we're doing is 50 years and older. Retention is obviously the longevity of employment, and we've taken it as an interpretation that is different from the intention to stay or intention to leave, which can be measured differently, and job satisfaction, which is also a different entity to workforce retention. In terms of the context, we're looking at the international evidence within only the aged care sector, because that's what ARIIA is about. We've looked at academic Angry, and we're limited to what's written in English. So we'd start with the value of older workers, and the energy and enthusiasm that Simon was talking about in the younger workers wasn't as apparent in the older workforce, but they bring a different set of attributes. So the accumulation of skills over time, and those skills can be technical skills, they can be learned skills, all sorts of different, you know, in terms of relationship and managing challenging situations and so on. When it comes to experience, it can be about similar situations or the systems and how to navigate situations or systems, and familiarity of having handled similar contexts over time. Older workers are seen to take less sick leave, and they are 5 times less likely to change jobs. So that was a figure of 1.7% compared with younger workers, the same 15 to 24-year-old who were more likely to leave at 12.6%, and they were considered more mobile. The idea of corporate knowledge and loyalty was presented as a factor, and in aged care, the diversity of the older worker represents the customer base that's being served. When we look at the factors affecting older workers, we've grouped them into 3 main groups. So the individual or personal factors are defined as variables important to the care worker because of personal beliefs and life experience, either in or out of the workplace. The organisational factors are variables that can be changed or influenced by the organisation, and those changes impacting the worker. And in terms of the sector and industry, we're talking about aged care in this section of the presentation. That came from a systematic review in 2023. So some of the examples of the personal factors could be personal burnout. Role ambiguity was in there as a personal factor, and that related to ambiguity regarding roles and responsibilities. Relationships at work was quite high. Thinking about the operational or the organisational elements, it was things like organisational restraints and the type of leadership and the culture within the organisation. The sector demands, the type of work with older people in aged care, and then the crossover. Some of the crossover things were, for example, the workload, the lack of support. And central to all of the areas was something like salary. There's a proportional representation. And in this slide, all the 3 key areas and their crossover areas are represented here. So in the individual sector section, which is in the pink, the major one, the pale pink, that's related to the commitment to the organisation, at their education level, their physical health, and the fit to the job. So their suitability, their personal views on their suitability to the job, and their satisfaction. So those were the elements that came in under the individual section. The large purple top left area is the sector area, and the sort of things in the sector were, I might move on to that bottom left corner there, which is the organisational thing element. So that's the organisational characteristics. So whether the organisation was rural or remote, the distance people had to travel, whether it was a for-profit, non-for-profit, or what type of organisation it was, and things like the caseload, so the number of clients expected to be seen and that sort of thing. Leadership came in under the organisational sector, and lack of leadership or challenges with leadership. The availability of resources, and again, the role clarity there. Over to you, Janine.
All right, so thanks, Nikki. And I will be covering the strategies that we found in doing this review. So the strategies for older workforce, unfortunately, there's very limited research that we found that really evaluated the impact of strategies. So majority of the information come from narrative reviews and reports. Okay? So, however, the Center of Excellence in Population Aging Research here in Australia has published a comprehensive report that describes the overarching concept of strategies for older workforce. And this is based on what they found about older workforce, that most employers remain underprepared to support age diversity in the workplace, despite recognizing its importance, with few implementing effective policies or practices in place. And this is evident both in globally and in Australia. Contributing factors were actually highlighted by Nikki, and this include also negative stereotypes about older workers, lack of awareness of about the productivity benefits of an age-diverse workforce, amongst all others. Employers also often overlook the value of traits like experience, loyalty, and skill complementarity, and fail to recognize that age-friendly environments boost both well-being and performance. And this is where the CPAR model offers the 3I model, which include individualize and integrate. And I'll go over this and discuss this a bit more in detail. Okay. So when we talk about inclusive strategies, it's actually important to proactively recognize the value and experience that older employees bring to the workforce. Older workers contribute a wealth of institutional knowledge, professional expertise, mentorship capabilities, and problem-solving skills that develop over the decades. Their perspectives enrich decision-making, stabilize teams, and support the transfer of critical know-how to younger colleagues. And this can be done by reviewing and addressing age-related stereotypes, removing discriminatory barriers in hiring and promotion, and implementing policies that support longer and healthier working lives. To counteract these dynamics, and then organizations can implement training specifically designed to address ageism. Such training should raise awareness about the forms and impacts of age-based bias, challenge common misconceptions, and provide practical strategies for inclusive communication and behavior. Training should be mandatory for leaders and managers, as they play a crucial role in shaping team dynamics and fostering a culture of respect. Okay. Now, for the next I, which is individualized strategies, we know that a one-size-fits-all approach to work is no longer effective in multi-generational workforce. It is crucial to individualize and tailor job roles, responsibilities, and develop opportunities to reflect the diverse needs of employees at different life stages. This might include offering flexible working arrangements, phased retirement options, mid-career upskilling and training programs, mentoring roles for senior employees, having cafeteria benefit plans, and wellness initiatives that support health and productivity across all age groups. Physical and digital workspaces should also be designed or adapted to meet age-related needs, such as ergonomic equipment and accessible technology. And lastly, it's important to ensure that we integrate workers of different ages through collaboration and knowledge sharing. The more effectively older workers are integrated into an organization, the more their strengths can be leveraged and the more successfully aged diverse teams can perform. Now, there's some tips that we present to you here that we found in the literature as well on how to foster integration and engagement at work, which include implementing structured knowledge transfer processes such as reverse mentoring, cross-generational teams, and shared learning platforms to ensure that insights, innovations, and institutional knowledge are passed on across age groups, and providing communication and recognition that demonstrates appreciation and respect for the experience of the older workforce. It may actually also help to conduct employee research related to the differentiated needs of the workforce, and specifically the older work group, on a regular basis as the providers or the team would require. All right, so key takeaways. To summarize our presentation, we highlight that experience is irreplaceable, and older employees bring deep institutional knowledge and mentorship capabilities that strengthen the team's performance. Their perspectives enrich decision-making, stabilize teams, and support the transfer of critical know-how to the younger individuals. Second, it's important to know and remember that understanding retention factors can help inform tailored strategies. Okay? And understanding unique motivators as well for older workers, such as flexibility, purpose, health, support, would lead to more effective retention efforts. And lastly, strategies need to consider inclusivity, individualization, and integration to better drive the retention of older workforce. And just to show you that that's how our website looks like, and this is where we will be putting all the results of our review on retention. So that's the Knowledge and Implementation Hub page from the ARIIA website. So thanks you.
Thanks, Janine. I'm conscious of time, so as Adelina has just mentioned, the recording for this will be uploaded within a few weeks, hopefully. We will endeavour to put the links that have been put in the chat today into the group interest group discussion, as well as any other seminal papers that we've come across. Please feel free to share other things that you come across as well. It's not just us, it's a two-way conversation. So very happy if other people have got ideas about, you know, good system level or papers that they think are really useful that translate across our different country boundaries. I think all of our speakers were very happy. Simon's put his email address in there. I know Sarah did previously, and ARIIA obviously happy to answer any questions. And really, just really grateful to Adelina and the Global Observatory team for giving us the opportunity to start this interest group, and hope that you've found useful information and have found this helpful and will join us again. So thank you so much for everyone's participation and interest, some great questions, lots of chat in the comment sections, and yeah, really appreciate your input and attention. Adelina, did you want anything else to say? I know we're running out of time.
Just say congratulations on an excellent webinar, and looking forward to the next ones. And yeah, good evening and good day, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.